I think one of the biggest misunderstandings people have now is they think they're confused, but they're not. Honestly, I think they're overloaded. And there's a massive difference between those two states. Because confusion suggests lack of intelligence, lack of capability, lack of understanding. But overload is different. Overload happens when the system has absorbed more stimulation, pressure, information, emotion, stress, uncertainty, or noise that it can properly process. And modern life is always perfectly designed for overload now. Think about the average day. Notifications, emails, financial pressure, social media, breaking news, market volatility, comparison, algorithms competing for attention. People messaging constantly, constant consumption at insane speed. And somewhere inside all of that, people are trying to find clarity. But clarity rarely arises inside chaos. That's the irony. Most people are trying to think their way out of nervous system overload. And usually that doesn't work. Because once the nervous system becomes saturated, everything starts feeling emotionally louder. Decision making gets harder. Focus weakens. And you second guess yourself more. Simple things suddenly feel complicated. And then people start saying, I don't know what's wrong with me. I can't think clearly, I'm stuck, I'm lost. But what if you're not lost? What if your system is simply flooded? That distinction matters massively. And honestly, I see this in markets all the time, especially during volatility. People think they're struggling because they lack strategy, they lack intelligence, they lack discipline, but often they simply haven't regulated their nervous system enough to interpret information calmly. That's huge. Because emotional overload distorts perception. When someone's dysregulated, everything feels urgent, everything feels dangerous. Every candle looks catastrophic, right? Itchy back. Every dip feels like failure. Every red day feels personal. And then the nervous system, well, that starts searching desperately for certainty. And that's when people begin over-consuming. More charts, more videos, more opinions, more scrolling, more noise. Trying to force clarity through accumulation. But accumulation often increases overload further. And this applies way beyond markets. Relationships too. Life decisions, career decisions, burnout, pressure. You know, sometimes people don't need more input. They need less noise. That was a massive lesson for me personally, because there was definitely a period of my life where I thought more effort equals more clarity. So I'd push harder, study harder, analyse harder, think harder, consume harder. But eventually the system starts overheating. And once that happens, your perception changes. You stop observing clearly. You start reacting emotionally. And the one thing I've really learned over the last few years is clarity often arrives after regulation, not before it. That's important. People think once I finally know what to do, I'll calm down. But weirdly, it's often the opposite. Once the nervous system settles, clarity naturally starts returning. You see this constantly in nature too. A great analogy coming. Look at water. Agitated water distorts reflection. Still water reflects clearly. Human beings aren't that different. And honestly, a lot of people are operating with permanently agitated internal water now. Always stimulated, always emotionally processing, always consuming, always switched on. And eventually, the nervous system says, enough. The strange thing is some of the clearest moments I've had recently haven't come through force. They've come through walking, silence, space, early mornings, less stimulation, observation, and slowing down. That's when patterns emerge, not during emotional flooding. And I think this is one reason markets fascinate me so much, because markets expose internal state. You know, two people can look at the exact same chart. I've actually had this conversation the other day. One sees opportunity and one sees danger. One sees structure, the other sees chaos. Why? Because perception is heavily influenced by nervous system condition. And honestly, I think a lot of people are trying to solve nervous system exhaustion intellectually instead of physiologically. I think sometimes the answer isn't more analysis. Sometimes the answer is sleep, rest, movement, breathing room, space away from constant stimulation. You know, people, that's not weakness. That's system maintenance, right? Operators understand this, because high performance is not permanent intensity, it's intelligent regulation. And the fascinating thing is, once overload starts reducing, you often realise you were never actually confused. You were saturated. And saturation changes perception. So maybe the goal isn't force more clarity. Maybe the goal is to reduce enough noise that clarity can naturally emerge again. Because sometimes the problem isn't that you can't hear your intuition. It's that the entire system has become too loud to hear anything clearly at all. This is The Signal, and this is episode 2.